still remember how much it used to shock me when I'd see somebody grab one biscuit and stop after that. I used to look at them with envy thinking, how on earth are they doing that? Because I knew that the minute that I had one biscuit, I would feel this compulsive urge to keep going, and I just didn't know how to stop myself. And the same went for anything sweet like donuts or cake, or even savoury things like crisps. I could not seem to stop once I started. The embarrassment and the overwhelm that this led to me in public specifically meant that I would either try to refrain from eating, or that I'd internally be fighting myself non-stop to try and stop myself from eating and binging in public, but it became increasingly difficult over time. What that meant is that I just ended up binging on my own and abstaining from eating any kind of unhealthy food that could trigger a binge for me in public. And one of the biggest things that I kept thinking when I saw other people eating just one of anything was, how on earth are they doing that? What are they doing? How are they different from me, or what is wrong with me that means that I find this so difficult? This isn't a problem that I struggle with anymore, and over the years as I've trained as a psychologist, it's an issue that I've come to help my own clients overcome. Not just because I'm using my own lived experience to help them through that kind of problem, but because the area of specialization that I've gone down within psychology and within coaching has meant that I am able to professionally support them when they encounter those sorts of similar difficulties. And of course, me being able to relate to them makes a really big difference. So if you're in that spot that I was in many years ago, or the spot that most of my clients find themselves in right now, where you cannot seem to control yourself if you just have one of anything unhealthy, then this video is for you. Hi, my name is Clara. I'm a sport and exercise psychologist and a fitness coach, and I help self-critical people stop sabotaging themselves on their fitness journey. I do that by helping them build a self-esteem, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly what to do if you're struggling with that ongoing self-sabotage all or nothing loop. So the example that I gave earlier is obviously my own lived experience, but for a lot of us who struggle or who have struggled with this compulsion to keep eating when we eat one of anything, there's two options that we typically go down. We either try to abstain completely from eating those sorts of things that are going to potentially trigger a binge, or we just allow ourselves to unwind and let loose and end up binging and overeating and then feeling horrific for it, which typically then leads to behaviors that try to compensate, like food restriction, or even like over-exercising, or both at the same time. So why does this keep happening, and what's different between you and someone who's able to just have one biscuit, one bunch of crisps or one slice of cake and not keep going? The difference is that your brain interprets you eating that unhealthy thing as a failure. And because your mind interprets it as a failure and you're coming into that situation with an existing low self-esteem, that creates a huge problem. Basically, your low self-esteem means that you don't feel good enough. And because not feeling good enough doesn't feel particularly nice, your mind is constantly going to look for and cling to things that are going to help boost that self-esteem. And health and fitness and weight loss are great ways to attain a sense of self-esteem because they're socially recognized, and it can help us feel really good because other people give us kudos for the change that we may be making in our body, and we might feel like our self-esteem gets quite a big boost. However, because your self-esteem is quite low to begin with, or from the outset, the way that you're going to set your goals is going to be very, very rigid. Your mind is going to have these very high expectations of yourself in setting these goals to move you towards a place in which your self-esteem is not going to be so low, because it's almost like your mind is going, okay, once I reach that goal, that sort of stretch goal, I can imagine myself being so far away from how should I feel right now that it is going to be worth it. But in order to get to that point, I have to commit to this 100%, right? So it's almost like that stretch goal is creating a big enough gap from how you feel right now to how you expect to feel. And in order to attain that feeling, you're going to have to be in it 1000%, because the moment that you fail, that feeling of not being good enough gets triggered again. So it's almost like it creates this condition or this conditional situation in which you're setting your goals to get away from the feeling of not being good enough, as opposed to moving towards feeling better about yourself. And because of that, because you already don't feel good enough at your core, and you've set up with these very perfectionistic expectations of how to move yourself towards intentional weight loss, right? Eating less, moving more, losing body fat, getting that social praise, feeling better in yourself because you feel more confident when you look at yourself in the mirror, for example. Because you're setting yourself up from a place of not feeling good enough, the minute that anything happens that deviates even marginally from the goal that you set for yourself, this perfectionistic, rigid expectation, you're going to feel like crap all over again. And so in that situation where you do find yourself having one biscuit, your mind automatically interprets that as a humongous failure. The feeling of shame that is evoked in response to you feeling not good enough is going to completely overwhelm you, and that is that danger point. That's when your mind is more often than not going to decide that you have failed, and in response to that failure, because it is so overwhelming, you're going to decide that it is easier to press the fuck it button and get rid of any goals than it is to contend with that feeling of having failed and maybe not being good enough, or that feeling of not being good enough being confirmed. It's quite paradoxical though. Hopefully I'll be able to explain it. So when your mind observes you failing and you experience that feeling of shame that's super overwhelming in that moment, the feeling that in reality what comes up is that urge to keep going and basically like just go, fuck it, who gives a shit, and just like, basically binge. The reason that happens is because your mind is going, well, if I just sit and recognize that I've had this one thing, what I'm going to have to contend with is a feeling of having letting myself down, because I wasn't set out to eat that thing that I did end up eating, but now I've done that. And so if I stop here and now, I'm going to have to sit with that real discomfort that's going to almost like remind me that I'm not good enough. However, if I press the fuck it button, what I'm essentially doing is I'm ridding myself of all of my goals and all my expectations, right? Because you just go, well, who cares? Fuck it, I don't care. And if you don't care, then there are no standards that you can measure yourself up against, right? If you press the fuck it button and pretend that you don't give a fuck, then the standards disappear. And when the standards disappear, it means that you've got no yardstick to measure yourself up against. And when you've got no yardstick to measure yourself up against, there is nothing that is going to evoke and elicit that feeling of shame, because you have gotten rid of the thing, right? That comparison metric, that perfectionistic standard that was generating that feeling to begin with. And that's why you're not pressing the fuck it button. It's not because you've got no control. It's just because your mind interprets that failure of eating that one thing to be so overwhelmingly shameful that it is easier in that moment, if in the absence of any other self-regulation tools, to press the fuck it button. And so that feeling that you notice when you have that one biscuit and immediately your mind is like zoned in on it and it's like racing, and it's like, go have more, and you're thinking, no, I really shouldn't, this is really stressful. You're thinking, oh, but I could, and your mouth is salivating, and you're almost like trying to pull yourself back. You're making promises to yourself, if I have another one, it's fine, I'm still kind of within my calorie range. Or maybe you tell yourself that you're going to have some later on when there's nobody else watching you, because you know that the minute that you start, you cannot stop. Or maybe you're telling yourself, actually, I'm going to abstain, but then when I go on my way home and when I'm going to be on my own, I'm going to end up buying all my binge foods, and I'm going to sit and I'm going to binge, because that's going to be so much more comfortable, so much less shameful, because I'm not going to be surrounded by people. So the problem is that your mind is interpreting those situations where you have one transgression of these rigid rules that you've set for yourself. It's interpreting those situations as a failure, and that failure is generating a huge amount of stress. And in the absence of knowing how the heck to regulate from that stress, you're going to end up pressing the fuck it button, because A, for one, you get to get rid of the goal, the thing that's generating the stress, and B, food is self-soothing, and that is a reality. So again, it's a bit of a like being stuck between a rock and a hard place, which is why it's so difficult to get untangled from this. Difficult, but not impossible. Now, I can explain this to you like this because I'm a psychologist and a fitness coach. Other fitness coaches are probably going to tell you that the reason that you overeat and can't control yourself around food or can't control yourself around biscuits or sweet food is because you've got no self-control. Maybe they think that it's a lack of discipline. Maybe they think it's a lack of willpower, a lack of wanting your goals enough, or maybe they're just going to tell you to simply serve the urge in the moment, take a breath and move on. I don't think that's enough, okay? And if you work with a coach, when you're struggling with these sorts of patterns, you're probably going to end up remaining stuck long term, and I don't want that for you. So this is what you're going to do instead, and this is what, if you were my client, I would get you to do instead. The key thing that is generating that cycle of having one biscuit and not being able to stop is the fact that you're trying to avoid feeling like a failure. So the solution to being able to move forward is to sit and allow yourself to notice that feeling of failure, which is really unpleasant, and it's why nobody wants to do it, and it's why nobody, in the absence of knowing how the hell to do this, it's why nobody can kind of solve this problem for themselves. But you are, because you're going to watch this video and then you're going to download the self-sabotage stopper that is in the description to keep the steps on your phone saved, and you can look at them every single day whenever you need to, and you need those steps to be there for you too. So let's just say that you're in a moment where you've had one biscuit and immediately you've got this huge fear that you're going to end up binging, and you feel like you cannot control yourself from wanting to eat more and more and more until you feel sick. The first thing you're going to do is just you're going to notice your body. You're going to take a minute to just pay attention to the different sensations that are showing up for you. I really want you to zone in to where that feeling of failure is, to where shame is for you, to where that feeling of not being good enough is. And I know this is really unpleasant and really difficult, but as much as you can, I want you to introspect and notice what's there for you. Is it a tightness of the chest? Does your throat feel really dry? Does your neck feel really tight? Is it your stomach? Does it feel like it's tightening? Does it feel empty? Does it feel like a hole? Pay attention to the sensations in your body and allow yourself to be in their presence in that moment. Again, this sounds simple, and in a way it is, but it isn't easy, so give yourself lots of patience to practice this. The second thing you're going to do is notice what emotions come up for you. So again, as you introspect inwards and as you notice those different physical sensations, pay attention to what feelings, what emotions, what words are coming up for you. What is there? What are those feelings? Is it shame? Is it disappointment? Is it disgust? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it comfort? Is it happiness when you eat? What is there for you? See if you can sort of Pick the different emotions that are there for you. And if you need a bit of help, you can always look up something like a feelings wheel that might be able to help you decipher what is actually there for you and what you're experiencing in that moment. The third step you're going to take is identify the thoughts that are showing up in relation and in response to those physical sensations and those emotions. What thoughts are you noticing? Is your mind telling you that you're disgusting? Is your mind saying things about those emotions like you're disgusting, you're not good enough, I told you so, you're a fucking pig, you've got no control, you should have stopped, you shouldn't have had that? Is your mind telling you, oh, but go on, press the fucking button, who gives a shit? What is your mind telling you? And actually give yourself a chance to identify the different thought patterns that are there. It's only when we try to avoid our thoughts that we end up struggling with them so much more. So it's much better to just allow yourself to come into contact with them. It's almost like if your mind is saying, oh, don't think about the biscuits, you're fucked, like genuinely, because that's not going to work. It's like telling you not to think about a pink elephant. You've got a pink elephant in your mind right now, right? We cannot control our thoughts. We can only notice what we're thinking, pay attention to it, and allows us to be open in the presence of what those thoughts are. But for that, we need to be able to take the time to identify what those thoughts are. And as you identify those thoughts, I want you to almost like see if any of them are louder. There's always some thoughts that feel a lot more intense than others, and I want you to allow yourself to tune into those and see what are those thoughts telling you to do. What is the urge to act in that moment? Maybe your mind is telling you that you should restrict, that you should have as many biscuits as you want. I know I keep coming back to biscuits, but it's just the easiest example. But maybe your mind is telling you that you should have as many biscuits as you want, and straight away it's going into planning mode and it's going fine, because if you then don't have dinner and if you then like skip breakfast tomorrow, and you go to the gym and you do some cardio, you'll be fine. Is that what your mind is doing for you? Is your mind just telling you to stop eating completely and then make sure that you restrict later on in the day, or maybe make sure that you walk higher instead of getting the bus to burn off that one biscuit that you had? Is your mind telling you that you should abstain from eating, but that then you're going to go home and binge? What is your mind telling you to do? What does that compulsion to act actually look like? That moment or that thing that is going to lead you to essentially self-sabotage. And this is what you're going to do next. I want you to ask yourself, did you have a choice in any of those things? Did you have a choice in the physical sensations that showed up for you, on the emotions, the thought patterns, the urges? Did you genuinely have a choice? And I want you to realize that you didn't choose that for yourself. You didn't go out of your way to feel discomfort, tightness, sadness, anxiety, thoughts of being disgusting, thoughts of not being good enough. Nobody in their right mind goes out of their way to deliberately experience those sorts of distressing thoughts, and neither did you. And so given that you did not have a choice, a single choice in any of that, I want you to remember that blaming yourself is pointing the finger at the wrong place, at the wrong person. There really is nowhere and nothing to blame this on. But the reality is that you didn't choose that experience. However, you do have a choice in how you respond, because when you notice the urge to act, it's one thing to notice it, and there's another whole thing in terms of responding. Already the steps that you've taken up until this point act as circuit breakers to stop you getting tangled up and to stop you from automatically, pressing that fucking button. So now that you've identified what that urge to act was, in response to the physical sensations, emotions, and in response to the thoughts, and that you've recognized that this is not your choice, you do have a choice to make. And the question I'm going to ask you is this: what is the next kindest thing that you could do for yourself in that moment? What does that look like? And when you think about that step, try your best to infuse it with kindness, with that compassion of, I know it's the cliche thing to say, but what would you say to a friend, for example? How would you encourage them to respond in that moment? Maybe it is doing something, removing yourself from the situation, giving yourself permission to have the biscuit. Maybe it could be feeling something, like generating a feeling of warmth, doing something to self-regulate, like making a warm cup of tea and focusing on the warmth of the drink in your hands and what that's like. It could be having a thought mantra that you can repeat to yourself, of saying, this isn't my fault and this is really difficult, as a means almost to remind yourself that this is hard and it's not chosen. So what is the next kindest thing that you could do for yourself in that moment? And if you're able to, go and do that. Now, I know that these 6 steps, I'm rattling them off the top of my head because I've been practicing them for many, many years, and they do take intentional, deliberate practice to be able to bring them into your day-to-day life and into your day-to-day routine, so that in those moments where you feel so overwhelmed because you've had one thing and you want to be able to stop yourself, it's a practice of doing this over and over to essentially circuit break at any point. And any of those steps, again, I've listed them in a particular order, but you can use any of those. Maybe like your thoughts are more loud than your feelings or than your physical sensations. So you can pay attention to any of those in those moments to help you come back to yourself and help you decide how you want to respond instead, how you want to respond more kindly. Because I can tell you right now that binging and overeating to the point of feeling disgusted in yourself and feeling unwell is never going to be the kind response. Restricting yourself completely and not eating at all is never going to be the compassionate response either. And over-exercising to burn off whatever food you have had that your mind deems to be unacceptable or not good enough is also never going to be the compassionate response. The compassionate response, more often than not, is reassuring yourself that it's not your fault and that it's okay, and that you can continue to commit to doing the things that are important to you, which is actually remain in this balanced way, focused on your health and fitness journey, given that that's clearly important to you. And as you do that, as you start to respond with more kindness to those situations in which your hand wants to slam over the self-sabotage button, as you continue to do that, that cycle that repeats itself over and over will start to break, because by you not pressing the fuck it button, you're then not reinforcing this idea that you're not good enough. You're not reinforcing this idea that you're good for nothing, which in response to binges typically leads to wanting to set even more high standard perfectionistic goals. It means that you're not going to set unrealistic goals for yourself, and in not setting unrealistic goals for yourself, you're more likely to meet them. You're less likely to feel like a failure, and when you're less likely to feel like a failure, you're less likely to press the fuck it button, and that is how that chain reaction goes over and over, and that is how you break it. So like I said, if you want to keep those 6 steps to self-sabotage stopping in your pocket, download my aptly named self-sabotage stopper from the description, save it onto your phone, and if you use it, please let me know how you get on with it. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.